It was the scent that betrayed him. Not a message, not a lipstick stain, not some stranger's earring forgotten in the car. No. It was something far more subtle, far more calculated, and far more cruel. A scent of expensive perfume, floral, sweet, with a note of orange blossom, that lingered on the collar of his shirt like a whisper from someone else's body. Ethan had always been sensitive to fragrance. He used to sneeze the second I walked past a perfume counter. I had stopped wearing perfume years ago, for him, for the man I loved, the man I thought would never give me a reason to regret that choice. I stared at the shirt for a long time, my fingers resting gently on the fabric, as if it might confess if I touched it long enough. Our anniversary was the day before, and we had made a quiet plan to visit the Magnolia Gardens outside Charleston, where we first promised forever to each other under the willows. But that morning, he left early, said something vague about a work emergency, kissed me on the forehead and didn't even look into my eyes. I wanted to believe it was nothing. That maybe someone bumped into him. Maybe he used a new detergent. Maybe. But my gut whispered otherwise. Not in the loud, dramatic way the movies show, but in a slow, sickening twist that spread from my chest to my throat. Something was wrong. That evening when he came home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even ask. I simply placed the shirt on the bed and asked, "Whose scent is this?" His eyes flickered, not with guilt, but with calculation. And he smiled. Smiled. "You're being dramatic, Natalie," he said. "You know I wouldn't cheat. Come on. You've always had a wild imagination." That was his tactic. Gaslight. Deflect. Smiled just enough to make you question your sanity. I had played that game with him before, and I had lost every time, until now. I remembered something. A year ago, when we bought the car, our car, Ethan had set up everything for me. The app, the smart lock, the GPS. "So you'll always know where I am," he joked, placing a kiss on my cheek. I hadn't opened the app since. I didn't need to. I trusted him. Foolishly. I retrieved my phone, scrolled until I found it buried beneath unused icons. I had to reset my password. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a terrible need to know. The footage loaded slowly. There it was, yesterday, the same time he claimed to be at work. The camera angle from the dashboard showed the passenger seat. A woman's legs. Tanned, crossed, confident. Her voice came next, sharp and irritated. "Did your wife move my seat again? God, she's so annoying." I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then came Ethan's voice, light, amused, patronizing. "I told her not to touch it, but you know how housewives are, hard to reason with." Housewife, that's what I had become in his mind. A nuisance, a burden, not a partner. Not the woman who helped him build his business, who stayed up nights editing his pitch decks, who gave up her career because he said, "We can't both be working like crazy if we want a real family." The woman in the car laughed. "Ugh, she even wore your jacket today. It reeks of her. I don't want it anymore." He chuckled. "She's clueless. I told you." I hit pause. I could not breathe. That jacket. I bought it for him. A matching set, actually. Mine was a slightly smaller size, same deep navy, with our initials embroidered inside. I had reminded him that day to keep it in the car, in case the Charleston breeze turned sharp. That jacket had been a gesture of love. And now, it was an accessory in their game. That night he came home late. Claimed he had to work overtime. I had already watched that video 4 times by then. I was calm. Too calm. "Rough day?" he asked as he poured himself a drink. "I was just thinking," I said softly. "That jacket in the car. You still wearing it?" He paused. "What? Why?" "No reason," I said. just smelled like someone else. He stopped mid-sip. His smile faltered. I walked to the dining table, picked up a folder, and slid it across to him. "What's this?" "Divorce papers," I said. "I've already signed." For a moment, the world stopped turning. Then he laughed. Laughed. "Natalie, don't be ridiculous." "I'm not," I said. "And I'm not begging. Just sign it, please." He didn't. Not yet. He called me unstable. He accused me of violating his privacy. He even had the nerve to say I was breaking the marriage, not him. But I knew what I had seen. I remembered how we first met in college, how he tripped over his words asking me out, how he brought me coffee before every exam, how he whispered, "I'll never hurt you," with eyes that used to shine with truth. I remembered that night we made love after signing the mortgage, giggling about being real, adults now. I remembered how he asked me to leave my job and just trust him. I did. And now, here I was. Sitting in our dark living room, staring at the man who once made my heart race, now feeling like a stranger. He looked at me then, not like someone heartbroken, but like someone annoyed, inconvenienced. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," he muttered. "This is a phase. It'll pass." I nodded slowly. "No," I said. "You'll pass, through that door, and out of my life." And just like that, everything changed. But that wasn't even the worst part, because the real betrayal hadn't happened yet. That would come later, when I returned to the home I thought was mine, and found it already occupied. But that's a story for another part. If you want to find out what happens when Natalie walks into her own house and discovers a shocking truth waiting for her, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more emotional, empowering stories based on true human experiences. Now, before we go, here's a question for you. If you found a scent on your partner's clothes that didn't belong to you, what would you do? A. Confront them immediately. B. Investigate silently before saying anything. Comment your answer below with A or B. We'd love to hear what you would do in Natalie's place. The first thing that hit me was the smell. It wasn't just the scent of takeout containers left too long on a coffee table or the faint sourness of unwashed laundry. It was the smell of strangers, of lives that had no business existing in a place once filled with quiet intention and shared dreams. My hand froze on the doorknob. The keys still dangled from the lock behind me as I stepped into my own home. Correction, my parents' old house, the one they gifted me as a wedding dowry, and found myself an intruder in what looked like someone else's chaos. I had come here to breathe. To rebuild. After Ethan refused to sign the divorce papers, I knew I needed space. Charleston wasn't home anymore, not with him still floating through every street, every corner cafe, every echo in my bones. So I packed up and headed to Sedona, where the air was dry and clean and the red rock horizon never lied to anyone. The house had always been here, empty but waiting, untouched since my parents handed me the deed. I had imagined it quiet, dust-covered maybe, but still mine. What I didn't imagine was a stranger's bra draped over the banister, a pizza box curling open on the coffee table, a TV remote on the floor, flanked by crushed soda cans and a bright, pink toothbrush on the side table that absolutely wasn't mine. At first, I thought maybe there had been a mistake, that maybe, somehow, the house had been broken into, that maybe Ethan had rented it out behind my back, though the thought alone felt absurd. Who would do that without telling the person on the deed? But then I heard the water running in the upstairs bathroom, not a leak, not a broken pipe, a shower. I sat down, not out of calm, but because my knees wouldn't hold me anymore. I stared at the mess around me and wondered how many lies I had swallowed over the past year, simply because it was easier than acknowledging that the person I loved had become a stranger. The water stopped. Footsteps followed. Bare, quick, careless. Then she stepped out. She wasn't what I expected, and maybe that's what made it worse. She looked young, early 20s maybe. Wet hair slicked to her shoulders, cheeks flushed from the steam. She wore a silky robe, half open, like she didn't expect anyone in the house besides herself. Her mouth opened when she saw me, eyes wide, hands gripping the towel in a delayed attempt at modesty. "Who the hell are you?" she asked, like I was the one trespassing. I stood up slowly. My voice, when it came, was level. "I'm the owner of this house." She blinked. The confusion on her face shifted into something else, something calculating. She wrapped the towel around herself, tighter but didn't step back. "Wait, are you Natalie?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She let out a breathless laugh, one that held no humor. "He said you were in Charleston." That was all I needed to hear. "How long have you been living here?" I asked. She shrugged, drying her hands on the towel like this. Conversation wasn't absurd. "A few weeks, maybe a month. Ethan said the house was his. He said you gave it up in the divorce." "We're not divorced," I said coldly. Something flickered behind her eyes, but she didn't look away. "Well, that's not what he told me." Of course it wasn't. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to burn it all down and start over. But instead, I breathed, in and out, like my therapist once taught me. A trick I never thought I'd need in this exact context. "You need to get dressed," I said. "And then we're going to talk about when you're leaving." Her lips twitched. "I don't think Ethan will like that very much." I didn't respond. I didn't need her permission to reclaim what was mine. She disappeared back upstairs without another word. 10 minutes later, I sat on the edge of what used to be our bed, now covered with unfamiliar sheets, and listened to the front door open, with urgency. I knew it was him before he spoke. "Natalie?" He said my name like it meant something, like it still belonged to him. When I didn't answer, he found me sitting there. His face drained of color, then flushed red all over again. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "You let her live in my house. It's not your house anymore. Legally, still is." "She needed somewhere to stay," he said, voice rising. "I didn't think you'd come back here." I stood. "That's the point, isn't it? You didn't think. You never do." Samantha appeared behind him. That was her name. I'd finally heard him say it. "Ethan, don't yell at her," she said sweetly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "She's clearly upset." He pulled away from her. "Just give us a moment," he muttered. She raised her brows but left the room, slow and deliberate. Ethan turned to me. "This doesn't have to be messy," he said. "But it is," I answered. "Because you made it that way." He walked closer. "Look, I made a mistake, okay? But I've already told Samantha we'd figure things out." "Figure what out? Where she gets to live while I'm still legally married to you?" His jaw clenched. "You left. You said you didn't want anything from me." "I said I wanted a divorce. That doesn't translate to move your girlfriend into my house and let her wear my slippers." I stared at him, hard. "You've been living two lives, Ethan. You don't get to act like I'm the unreasonable one." "Then what do you want?" There it was. The question he should have asked months ago. The question I had already answered in my mind, again and again. "I want you to pay rent," I said. "Backdated. For every month she's lived here, and I want her out by the end of the week." He scoffed. "You can't be serious." I crossed my arms. "Or I can get a lawyer involved." Again, his eyes narrowed. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "No," I said, "but I'm done being humiliated. That's different." He stared at me for a long time, and then, for the first time since all of this began, I saw it. Not anger, not superiority, but defeat. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a checkbook. "I can give you 3 months' worth." "She's been here for 6. He froze. "You kept track?" "No," I said, "but I keep receipts. When I left that day, I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. I walked out with my head high, knowing that for the first time in a long time, Ethan Moore was not in control of the narrative. But the story wasn't over, because Samantha wasn't the type to disappear quietly. And Ethan? He was about to find out what happens when the woman you pushed aside starts pushing back. Natalie Bennett never imagined she'd become the kind of woman who took screenshots of social media posts, downloaded dashcam footage, and labeled files with names like evidence, betrayal. But then again, she'd never imagined that the man she once adored, the man she once believed would never hurt her, would weaponize her love and loyalty against her. And so, that's who she became. Quietly, purposefully. The shift began not with anger, but with clarity. It happened the morning after the confrontation in Sedona, as she sat on the porch of a small coffee shop and scrolled through Samantha Hale's Instagram feed. It was public, brazen, and full of carefully curated joy. There they were, Ethan and Samantha, smiling under the warm Arizona sun, arms wrapped around each other. Captions laced with coy romance and hashtags like baby on board and blessed life. Natalie felt no rage, just a cold, precise sense of insult. A woman was not only living in her home, sharing her husband, and posing in the kitchen she designed, she was broadcasting it to the world, asking for applause. Samantha posted daily, bump updates, latte selfies, daddy-to-be tags under Ethan's photos. To the world, they were a picture of new beginnings. But Natalie knew better. She saved every post, screenshotted every comment, downloaded every video. She called her lawyer that afternoon. "I need to file for divorce," she said. "But not just that. I need to sue for bigamy." There was a pause on the line. "Bigamy is a criminal charge, Natalie. Are you sure you want to go that route?" They're acting like they're married. She's calling him her husband. They live together, she's pregnant, and he refuses to finalize the divorce. What would you call that? The lawyer exhaled slowly. "It's not impossible, but it's not easy." "Neither was loving him," she said, and ended the call. From that moment on, Natalie turned grief into focus. She was done playing the humiliated wife. She was done letting them script her story while she waited in the wings. She contacted her old friend Betrayal, a software engineer who'd once worked in digital forensics. "I need help pulling full timestamps from a synced car app," Natalie told her. Betrayal raised her eyebrows. "You're really doing this, huh?" Natalie nodded. "I'm not looking for closure anymore. I'm building a case." The weeks that followed became a strange blend of domestic routine and legal preparation. In the mornings, Natalie meditated. She cooked breakfast slowly, almost ritualistically, trying to remind herself that nourishment wasn't just physical. She returned to freelance design work, mostly with out-of-town clients who didn't ask questions about her personal life. At night, she compiled everything: dashcam videos, app logs, screenshots from Ethan's calendar entries that contradicted his overtime lies. And always, there was Samantha's social media. It was almost laughable how much she posted. One video showed her giving a tour of her home, ending with a wink and a statement that burned like acid. "Manifesting the life you deserve, babes. Never settle." Natalie wondered how Samantha defined settling. Stealing someone else's. Husband and house didn't exactly scream self-worth, but she didn't respond. She saved it, added it to the folder labeled evidence, cohabitation. What neither Ethan nor Samantha understood was that in their attempt to build a fantasy life, they had become their own worst witnesses. The final piece fell into place when Natalie received a message from one of her former neighbors back in Charleston. "You probably already know," the message began, "but just in case, you're all over the HOA group chat." Attached were screenshots. Apparently, Samantha had thrown a garbage bag from the second floor of the house, hitting an elderly neighbor on her morning walk. The woman had to be hospitalized. In the thread, Ethan jumped in to defend her. "She's pregnant," he wrote. "She was feeling dizzy. Let's not blow this out of proportion." But the neighbors weren't having it. "She shouldn't even be living there." Someone replied, "That house belongs to his wife. What a mess." Natalie smiled. She didn't even have to speak. The community was doing the talking for her now. The day she filed the criminal complaint, Ethan didn't answer her call. But she wasn't surprised. A day later, he sent a text. "You've gone too far," to which she replied, "No, you have." 2 weeks later, the court summoned Ethan Moore to respond to charges of bigamy, fraudulent cohabitation, and emotional damages related to marital misconduct. The courtroom was modest. Natalie wore a black suit, her hair pinned, her chin raised. Ethan arrived looking thinner, older. Samantha walked behind him in a pale beige dress, her belly slightly protruding. She didn't look smug anymore. She looked scared. The hearing lasted hours. Natalie's lawyer presented everything, every video, every post, every thread of evidence pointing toward deception and deliberate avoidance of divorce proceedings. Ethan's lawyer argued that Natalie had moved out voluntarily, that no marriage could survive her coldness, that he hadn't formally married Samantha, and thus the bigamy charge was an exaggeration. "But he calls her his wife," Natalie's lawyer said. "In public, in writing, on record, that is not harmless." The judge didn't say much, but he listened, and that was enough. Outside the courtroom, as reporters swirled, because yes, it had gone public, Natalie saw Samantha pacing in the hallway. She clutched her belly, breathing hard, and suddenly, she collapsed. The crowd gasped. Ethan rushed to her side. Paramedics were called. People shouted. Natalie stood frozen, watching the scene like a play she hadn't auditioned for. Later that night, she received a message from a mutual acquaintance. "The baby didn't make it," it read. "I thought you should know." Natalie stared at the screen. No joy, no pity, just silence. A deep, echoing silence that didn't ask for celebration or guilt. She didn't reply. In the days that followed, the story spread. Ethan Moore, the charismatic entrepreneur facing charges for bigamy. Samantha Hale, the woman who flaunted too much and lost even more. The court of public opinion was swift and ruthless. But Natalie stayed silent. She declined interviews. She turned off her notifications. She took long walks and started journaling again. Her therapist asked her how she felt about it all. "I feel," she paused, "like the storm passed and I'm still standing." The final hearing took place 3 weeks later. Ethan was found guilty. He received a suspended sentence with mandatory restitution. He was ordered to pay Natalie emotional damages, including reimbursement for the use of her property and legal fees. Samantha was not charged, but her involvement was documented in full. Natalie walked out of the courthouse with the wind at her back. She didn't look at Ethan. She didn't need to. His silence said more than his defense ever did. Back in Sedona, she opened her laptop and began writing again. Not emails or timelines, but fiction. The kind she had abandoned years ago when life got too loud. Stories of women who got knocked down and stood up stronger. Of betrayal that didn't destroy, only refined. Of endings that became beginnings. because Natalie Bennett was done being the broken wife. She was the woman who watched the ashes fall and planted something new where the fire once was. And she wasn't finished yet. Grief is strange when it doesn't come from loss, but from betrayal. It lingers in quiet places, showing up when you fold laundry alone or catch a familiar scent in a crowded store. But what no one tells you is that once the grief begins to shrink, it leaves behind space. Beautiful, open space. And in that silence, something else grows. For Natalie Bennett, it was peace. After the court's verdict, she didn't celebrate. She didn't pop champagne or book a trip. Instead, she cleaned her entire house with her own hands. Every drawer, every cabinet, every corner Ethan had ever touched. Then she stood barefoot in her living room and stared at the blank wall where their wedding photo had once hung. She didn't feel anger. She felt clarity. The peace wasn't loud. It didn't scream or shine. It was gentle. It came in the form of routine. In the mornings, Natalie walked to the farmer's market and picked fruit with no plan. She started writing again, but this time not to document evidence. She wrote fiction, quiet, pulsing stories about women who refused to be erased. Under a pen name, she began posting online. A short piece about emotional ghosts went viral. Within weeks, she had thousands of followers, and none of them knew who she really was. It was perfect. Then, 3 months after the trial, Ethan Moore reappeared. The first time, he didn't say anything. He was just there, standing at the edge of her walkway, holding a paper bag and a bouquet of roses. Red, of course. Always red. She didn't answer the door. She just watched from the upstairs window until he finally turned and walked away. But he came again. And again. Sometimes with food. Sometimes with flowers. Once with an old photo of them from college, tucked between the pages of a book she'd given him years ago. He never knocked, just left things on her doorstep like offerings at a shrine. Then came the messages. Short. Pathetic. I miss you. I think about you every day. Please, can we talk? She never responded. But one afternoon, she saw him before he could disappear. She had come back from the grocery store earlier than usual, arms full of oranges and artichokes, when she turned the corner, and there he was again, standing in that ridiculous way he used to. One hand in his pocket, one holding a bouquet, as if flowers could erase a sentence in a court ruling. Natalie, he said softly. She didn't speak. She opened the door, stepped inside, and let it close behind her. But he didn't leave. He knocked, and knocked again, until finally she opened the door. Not for him, but for herself. What do you want, Ethan? He looked thinner, sunken. His hair had grown out unevenly, and the clean shave he once took pride in was now replaced with patchy stubble. His once crisp clothes were now wrinkled and cheap. He looked like someone half-formed. I just want to talk. No, she said. You want forgiveness. Can I come in? No. He looked down. I made mistakes, Natalie. I know that, now. I'm not here to witness your enlightenment, she said. That's not my role anymore. He handed her the bouquet. She didn't take it. I remember you liked roses, he said. I did, she answered, until someone started, handing them to 2 women at once. He winced, but kept going. She's gone, Natalie. Samantha. She left. After everything, she said she couldn't look at me anymore. Said I ruined her life. Natalie raised her eyebrows. Did you come here hoping I'd disagree? He shook his head. I'm working now. Deliveries mostly. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. You mean now you get paid to show up at people's doors and leave before they ask you to? That stunned him into silence. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Let me guess. She stopped doing her hair, started complaining, stopped looking like the fantasy you imagined. He looked away, and suddenly, I didn't seem so terrible anymore. That's not fair, he whispered. What's not fair is what you did to me. What's not fair is how you made me doubt my worth while you played house with someone else in my home. I was unhappy, he said, and I was invisible. He opened his mouth to say something else, but she raised her hand. You don't love me, Ethan. You loved the version of me who didn't need anything, who praised your every move, who stayed small so you could feel big. The second I became real, tired, vulnerable, angry, you ran. He looked at her, eyes glossy now. I've changed. No, she said gently. You've been humbled. That's not the same thing. He looked down at the bouquet still in his hands. I don't want those, she said, nodding at the flowers. They're just roses, he said. They're just reminders, she corrected. He stepped back, as if physically stung. For a moment, she saw the boy he used to be, the one who wrote her poems in college, who whispered promises into her hair. But that boy was long gone, buried under choices, lies, and selfishness. I wish things had been different, he said. I don't, she replied. He looked up, confused. I'm not grateful for the pain, Ethan, but I'm grateful for what it showed me. I didn't lose myself, I found her, and she's better off without you. She closed the door softly, not angrily. Later that night, she threw the roses in the trash. The next morning, she made her own breakfast, watered her plants, and wrote for 4 hours straight. Her newest story, about a woman who refuses to open, the door to her past, was already gaining traction. Her audience was growing. So was her strength. And just like that, Ethan Moore stopped showing up. But her story wasn't quite finished, because the next chapter wouldn't belong to him. It would belong to her. It had been more than a year since Natalie Bennett stood in a courtroom and watched her marriage unravel in front of strangers. Since then, the world had shifted around her like the landscape after a storm, shattered in some places, greener in others. She'd stopped tracking time with court dates or confrontations. Now it was marked by simpler things. When the garden bloomed, when the rains came, when her latest short story crossed 1,000 shares. The name Ethan Moore rarely crossed her mind, and when it did, it passed like fog on a windshield, visible, for a second, then gone. So when she saw Samantha Hale again, it wasn't with anger. It wasn't even surprise. It was something closer to detachment, the kind that comes only after the wound has closed and the scar no longer aches. Natalie was on her way home from dinner with friends in Seattle when she stopped by a corner convenience store. It was almost 10 p.m., and she needed nothing more than toothpaste and ginger tea. The fluorescent lights inside were harsh, the kind that made everything feel too bright and too still. She barely noticed the cashier until she heard the voice. Will that be all? She looked up. Samantha. She was thinner now, worn down around the edges in a way no filter could soften. Her hair was pulled into a limp ponytail, eyes rimmed with shadows. The kind of fatigue that comes not from sleeplessness, but from the heavy toll of regret. And yet, when she saw Natalie, something flickered in her. Resentment, defiance, or maybe just embarrassment dressed as pride. I didn't expect to see you here, Samantha said, not unkindly. Natalie placed her items on the counter. I could say the same. I work nights now, Samantha said. It's quieter. Natalie said nothing. She waited. You probably think I deserve this, Samantha said after a pause. Standing here in a dead-end job while you write your little empowerment essays online. Natalie let the insult hang. Then she met Samantha's eyes. No. I don't think you deserve this job. I think you deserve the truth you tried to ignore. This just happened to come with it. Samantha flinched. You ruined everything. No, Natalie said gently. You did. I just stopped pretending I didn't notice. There was a silence between them then, filled with everything that had never been said. He's gone, you know, Samantha finally whispered. I'm sure you heard. Natalie nodded. She had. It had been 2 weeks earlier when the message reached her through a mutual acquaintance. Ethan Moore, 38, was pronounced dead at the scene following a domestic dispute that turned violent. The report said it happened late at night, that he came home smelling like another woman, that Samantha had confronted him, and the shouting escalated until she grabbed a nearby object, a glass ashtray, and struck him. One hit. That was all it took. The irony was cruel. The very scent that had exposed Ethan at the beginning, the unfamiliar perfume on a shirt collar, had returned to claim him in the end, a rose, and the thief. Both destroyed. Natalie remembered how Ethan used to call Samantha his little rose, and himself, the thief who stole her. In the end, it was the rose who struck back, thorns out, petals crushed, and the thief who bled for it. I didn't mean to kill him, Samantha said now, her voice hollow. It just happened. He yelled and I snapped. Natalie didn't offer pity. She didn't ask what Samantha had expected, what life she'd thought she was building on the ashes of someone else's marriage. But she did feel something unexpected. Relief. Because now, there would be no more knock on her door. No more surprise. Roses left on the porch. No more desperate apologies soaked in manipulation. Just silence and freedom. I heard the trial's next month, Natalie said. Samantha nodded. They say it'll be quick. Plea deal. Manslaughter. Maybe 5 years. Natalie looked at the younger woman in front of her, this broken version of the girl who once sneered at her in her own living room. She wondered if Samantha finally understood what it meant to be disposable. I won't visit, Natalie said. Just in case you were wondering. I didn't expect you to. Natalie reached into her bag, pulled out cash, and placed it on the counter. Keep the change. As she turned to leave, Samantha's voice followed her, softer this time. Do you think it ever gets better? Natalie paused. Yes, she said. But not if you keep waiting for someone else to make it better for you. She walked out of the store and didn't look back. The air outside was sharp and clean. It smelled like rain, like something was about to end or begin. And so it did. In the months that followed, Natalie published her first book under her real name. It wasn't a memoir. It wasn't a tell-all. It was fiction. But every page pulsed with the raw, scarred truth of a woman who had been broken and rebuilt from her own courage. The book sold well, more than she expected. Invitations came, interviews, panels on reclaiming identity, writing, through pain, navigating betrayal with grace. People started asking, how did you find the strength? And she would smile and say, I stopped waiting for someone to return what I gave away freely, and I built something better instead. She donated a portion of her profits to shelters for women recovering from domestic abuse. She volunteered with a legal aid organization that helped women reclaim stolen assets from controlling spouses. She taught a writing course once a month called Owning the Narrative. And in all of that, she never once mentioned Ethan's name. Not because she forgot, but because the point of healing was that it didn't revolve around the one who hurt you. One evening, at a book signing in Portland, a young woman approached her table. She was nervous, barely 20, holding a battered copy of Natalie's book. I just wanted to say thank you, the girl said. Your words made me feel less ashamed. Natalie smiled. She signed the inside cover. Your story matters. Don't let anyone else write it for you. And in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just peace, but purpose. Ethan Moore was gone. Samantha Hale was paying her price. And Natalie Bennett? She was finally living the life she'd once been convinced she didn't deserve. There would be no dramatic final twist, no explosive ending. Just this, a quiet life, deeply her own. The story was over, but the healing was just beginning. Thank you for staying with us through Natalie's journey. If this final chapter spoke to something inside you, if you found your own strength mirrored in her silence, her fire, her peace, please consider subscribing. Your support means we can continue telling stories that matter, stories that help people feel seen. Natalie Bennett's story is not simply about infidelity, divorce, or courtroom victories. It's about rediscovering your own voice in the middle of silence, reclaiming your identity after being broken down piece by piece, and finally walking away, not as a victim, but as someone deeply alive, deeply aware, and deeply free. When the story began, Natalie was a woman trying to hold on to the illusion of a marriage already crumbling beneath her. She ignored the signs, dismissed the scent of a strange perfume, brushed aside Ethan's emotional distance, silenced the whispers of intuition we so often ignore because we love someone enough to believe their lies over our own truth. But Natalie's power began to awaken the moment she chose not to look away. Instead of confronting Ethan in rage, she observed. She gathered. She listened. To her gut, to the footage, to the subtle betrayals that left fingerprints across her life. And that quiet strength grew into something fierce. A woman who would not be gaslit, not be silenced, and not be erased. Her confrontation wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't fueled by revenge. It was steady, intelligent, and legal. She didn't just walk away. She took back what was hers. She forced Ethan and Samantha to face the consequences not only in private, but in court, in front of the world. And yet, Natalie never became what hurt her. She didn't strike back with cruelty. She didn't humiliate anyone. She simply chose herself, again and again. Even after winning the legal battle, Natalie's most meaningful victories came quietly. She didn't need public applause. Instead, she found purpose in her solitude. She rediscovered her love of writing, gave voice to others through her fiction, and began building a community grounded in empathy, strength, and truth. When Ethan returned, desperate, worn, empty, she didn't let old wounds reopen. She refused to let nostalgia override her hard-earned clarity. And when Samantha reappeared, defeated by the very life she once stole, Natalie didn't gloat. She spoke the truth. Not to hurt, but to offer clarity that perhaps might one day grow into healing for someone else. She knew that true strength isn't in what you say at your loudest, but what you walk away from when you finally know your worth. Natalie's journey reminds us that healing is not linear. There are setbacks, moments of doubt, and nights when you question everything. But healing is also unshakable once it takes root. It's not dependent on others changing, apologizing, or returning. It begins the moment you stop waiting for someone to make it right and start making it right for yourself. The deeper lesson from this story is this: your identity is not defined by the people who betray you. It's shaped by what you choose to build in their absence. Pain may open the door, but your choices decide what enters next: bitterness or growth, vengeance or peace. In today's world, where betrayal often comes in digital silence and relationships are blurred by distractions, Natalie's story teaches us the value of tuning inward, trusting yourself, setting boundaries not with anger, but with certainty. It's a call to every person, especially women, who've been told to stay quiet, to not make a scene, to endure. It says, you can leave, you can speak, you can heal, and you can still be whole. So how do we apply this to our own lives? We begin by listening to that quiet discomfort, that gut instinct, that subtle shift in someone's words or warmth. Then we gather strength, not to destroy, but to protect. We set boundaries, we speak our truth, and we hold our heads high, not because we're unhurt, but because we are resilient. Natalie's story isn't a fantasy. It's real, it's raw, and it reflects what many silently endure. But her ending tells us that liberation is possible, that self-worth can rise from ruins, and that justice can take many forms. The courtroom, the pen, or simply the act of walking away for the last time and never turning back. Here's your question to reflect on. When someone who hurt you tries to come back into your life after facing consequences, should you A. Hear them out, but protect your peace. B. Close the door completely and move forward. Comment your answer below with A or B, and let us know why you chose it. Your story and your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. What do you think about Natalie's journey? Did her story remind you of someone you know? Or maybe a piece of your own story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We want this to be a space where real experiences and honest reflections can be shared. And if you found this series powerful, healing, or simply unforgettable, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling meaningful stories, like this one, and gives us the motivation to bring you more narratives of courage, justice, and personal growth. Until next time, take care of your heart, trust your intuition, and never forget, your story is yours to write.